We are talking about the impending protests that are expected to kick off, on Thursday, August 1, 2024. We are not consistent with a perspective on national development that should give anybody amusement, rather cause for worry. As we speak, American, British, and Canadian sources indicate rather unofficially, that is consistent with the intelligence at their disposal, that the protests that are expected in a ceremonial sense to kick off on August 1, they're as good as begun. July 29th date. And look at that date. There's no historian that will gloss over that date, because July 29, which is today, connects with various facets of Nigerian history, which are basically not on the comfortable side. On July 29, 1966, there was a counter coup, which led to the overthrow of the Aguiyi Ironsi regime or dictatorship that very date, and it sparked off a trigger of negative developments. That same July 29, 1975, there was a coup that dethroned the Yakubu Gowon dictatorship. What are the implications of the protest? Now, the protesters are hinging their action on a triad of grounds. The first one is the instant abolition of the withdrawal of subsidy on premium motor spirit. You see, petroleum resources are usually three-dimensional. You have the premium motor spirit, PMS. They have automotive gas oil, which is the AGO, and then the liquefied natural product, that's LPFO, which has to do with the supply of kerosene resources. But because the social economy traditionally is anchored on the immediate or short-term consequences and implications with regard to the availability of premium motor spirit, people usually gloss over how the situation also visits the availability or supply of AGO and LPFO. So the anchor is how the premium motor spirit supply scenario affects the national economy. That is why the protesters hinge centrally their grievances on the withdrawal of subsidy on petrol. This other issue that they're also worried about is the need to actually restructure the contemporary federation, as well as the payment of the workforce on a new canvas instead of the stated 70,000 naira a month. The protesters are hinging their anger and grievance on the need to pay the minimum wage of 250,000 naira. In addition, to revisit the emoluments that are available to members of the National Assembly, primarily senators, and make their work, a part-time vocation instead of a permanent one. And then also the need to actually look at areas that have to do, with the total revaluation of what Nigeria stands to actually exist for, corporate Nigeria. What are the implications of these protesters' grounds? The implications, first of all, the federal government posture is that the announcement abolishing the subsidy of premium motor spirit, that is as good as accepted. And so the federal government does not see that it is necessary to revisit that issue. Now, is that acceptable to protesters? That remains to be seen. So if by August 1, the protests kick off as against the fears of the international community or the apprehension of the international community that instead of August 1, the protests are expected to kick off on July 29, that vexatious issue relating to the withdrawal of subsidy on petrol will have to be actually reconsidered or subject to or amenable to reconsideration by the federal government. The signs prevailing or the prevalent sign does actually indicate that there's going to be a revisit of that withdrawal of subsidy. Federal government does not appear inclined to revisit that aspect. And then on restructuring, there's also something like a diplomatic reaction from Aso Rock with regard to the issue of restructuring. The protesters' demands are also multidimensionally hinged on the implications of a federation that appears to be structurally weak, structurally deformed, because the region's take-home does not actually agree with the philosophy of a federation. So beyond August 1, which is going to be, futuristically speaking, is going to be a very important date in Nigerian history, because if the protests actually do take off on that date, And then depending on the reaction from the federal side, the federal government apparatus of reaction is this: it should not be violent, and it should not assume the complexion of the EndSARS riots, which triggered of conflict. If that does happen, then according to military sources, the federal government will not simply stand hands at akimbo and watch Nigeria degenerate into anarchy. So the implications of the impending protests are multifarious. But the most important thing is that the democratic polity model will have to exist outside these extraneous forces and developments. It is, of course, your reaction, and that matters a lot, because it is consistent with expectation that you like, share, and drop your comments. And then when at the end of the day the program layout does conform to your expectations, you will have actually agreed that Noble TV Live is meeting up your expectations. Thank you for watching. My name is Gray Armona.